Have you ever felt like you're walking through life completely alone, as if the world is moving on without you? It's easy to start thinking that maybe you've been forgotten or that you're being punished for something, but let me offer you a different perspective. Maybe, just maybe, what you're experiencing right now is preparation. Maybe this silence isn't rejection, it's separation. And that feeling of loneliness, it could very well be elevation. Think about it for a moment. When God has chosen you, the journey doesn't always look like what you expect. The path can be lonely, and sometimes it feels like everything around you is falling apart. But that's not a sign of failure or punishment. It's a sign of purpose. You see, isolation isn't a curse, it's a calling. And today, I want to walk you through 7 powerful reasons why God isolates the chosen. A truth that not everyone truly grasps. Let's start with the first reason: distractions. There comes a point in life when everything that used to seem important begins to lose its appeal. The people who once filled your days with chatter and companionship suddenly become distant. Opportunities that once flowed freely start to vanish, and it feels as though your efforts to make plans and follow through are in vain. When this happens, it's easy to feel abandoned, as though the universe has turned its back on you. But trust me, what you're experiencing right now isn't rejection, it's refinement. It's important to understand this. God is not stripping things away from you to hurt you. Instead, He's removing distractions, those things that are standing between you and the fulfillment of your destiny. He sees things you can't. He knows what's been holding you back, the people and situations that have been pulling you away from His voice, and the negative influences that have been feeding your fears rather than your faith. When God isolates you, He's creating space. Space for growth, space for change, space for you to hear His voice clearly. Because, let's face it, when life is loud and chaotic, it becomes hard to hear the still small voice that can guide you towards your purpose. In those moments of overwhelming noise, it's easy to lose sight of what's important and start moving based on what you see with your eyes rather than what you believe in your heart. But when God removes the distractions, when the clutter clears away, you're left with the purest form of guidance, His voice. Think about the story of Moses. Before he could lead a nation, God had to remove him from his comfort zone, the palace. Moses spent years in the wilderness, away from everything he knew, away from the distractions of his past. Why? Because God had to retrain his vision. He had to ensure that Moses could see with clarity, without the influences that would keep him from fulfilling his God-given purpose. And then there's the story of Paul. Before he became one of the most influential apostles in history, he was struck blind for 3 days. That blindness wasn't a punishment. It was a transformation. Paul had to be isolated from everything he once knew to be able to see with spiritual eyes. It was through that isolation that God gave him a vision for his future. Now let's talk about you. How many times has God removed something from your life? And at the time, it felt painful. Maybe you lost a job, or perhaps a relationship ended. Perhaps doors you desperately prayed for remained shut. But looking back, you see that it was all for your good. If that relationship had stayed, it would have poisoned your future. If that opportunity had worked out, it would have taken you down a path you were never meant to walk. If you had received what you wanted when you wanted it, you wouldn't have been prepared to handle the blessings that are now on the horizon. Distractions aren't always what we think they are. Sometimes they come disguised as blessings, as love, or even as success. But anything that pulls you away from God's voice, anything that keeps you from hearing Him clearly, is a distraction. And when God is calling you higher, He won't let those distractions remain. When you find yourself in this season where things start to fall away, where people seem to be walking away, don't fight it. Don't chase after what God is removing. Don't beg for things to go back to the way they were. Instead, trust Him. Lean into His purpose for your life. You don't need to fight the isolation. Instead, embrace it. In the silence, God speaks. In the stillness, He reveals. This is the moment to sharpen your focus, not to question His plan. It's a time to prepare for the next level of your life, because when God removes distractions, He's not leaving you empty. He's making room for something greater. And when that isolation has completed its purpose, you'll see that everything He removed was never meant to stay. The people, the jobs, the situations, they were all temporary. They were all part of the process that led you to a place where you could hear God more clearly and be ready for the greater things He's about to bring into your life. Now, let's move on to the second reason why God isolates the chosen: to reveal your true purpose. There comes a moment in the life of everyone who is called by God when He begins to separate the real from the fake, the loyal from the opportunistic, and the temporary from the permanent. This doesn't happen during the easy seasons, when everything is going well, when the blessings are flowing, and when life seems comfortable. No, this happens in isolation. When God isolates you, one of the first things He does is begin to reveal who is truly with you and who isn't. When everything is going great, it's easy for people to surround you, to celebrate you, to claim they're by your side. But the moment you step into a season of isolation, when you're not as available, when you don't have as much to give, when you start changing, that's when you see who is really there for you and who is only there for what you could offer them. And let me tell you, that revelation can be painful. It's not easy to see the people who you thought would always be there for you walk away. Sometimes it's people you least expect, people you thought were family, friends, even mentors. But when God is preparing you for something greater, He can't allow you to carry dead weight. He can't allow you to continue on a path with people who are holding you back. He knows that for the next chapter of your life, some people simply can't go with you. Look at Jesus, for example. He had 12 disciples, but not all of them were truly for Him. Judas was with Jesus, but he wasn't for Him. He walked in the same ministry, ate at the same table, and saw the miracles that Jesus performed. But when the pressure came, when loyalty was truly tested, Judas betrayed Jesus for a handful of silver. Consider Job as well. He lost everything: his wealth, his family, his health. And what happened? His so-called friends didn't comfort him. They accused him. They judged him. They couldn't see the calling on his life. They couldn't understand the test he was going through. And then there's Joseph. His own brothers sold him into slavery because they were jealous of what God had placed inside him. But look at the bigger picture. Had they not betrayed him, Joseph would never have reached the palace. Sometimes, betrayal is part of the process that leads you to where God wants you to be. When God isolates you, He reveals the truth about who is really in your corner. Some people were only meant to walk with you for a season, but they can't go with you into the next one. Not everyone is assigned to your destiny. Some people were sent to teach you lessons, and others were distractions that needed to be removed before they could derail the purpose God is building in your life. This is the season where you'll see who is still standing beside you, who still checks on you when you have nothing to give, and who still prays for you when you're struggling. These are the people who are meant to go with you into your next level. Hold on to them. They're the ones who will celebrate you not just in your victories, but in the quiet moments when you're doing the hard work. If you find yourself in this season where relationships are fading, where friendships are falling apart, or where connections that once felt strong are suddenly dissolving, trust that this is not a loss. This is God making room for something greater. He is protecting you from what you cannot yet see, positioning you for the future He is preparing for you. What may seem like a painful separation or a loss is actually a blessing in disguise. He's clearing the path, revealing who is truly meant to walk with you, and preparing you for what's coming. This leads us to the next reason for isolation: to prepare you for greater responsibility. You might feel as though doors are closing, and the path you once saw clearly is now shrouded in uncertainty. But know that God's timing is always perfect. What looks like a setback is actually Him aligning you for something bigger. The responsibilities you are about to carry require more than just skill or talent. They require a strength of character that can only be forged in the fire of adversity. Think about it. Every time God reveals more of your destiny, He is not only showing you where you're headed, but also preparing you for the weight of the responsibility that will come with it. In the moments when you feel most isolated, when your resources are stripped away, and when you feel the weight of being alone, that's when He's refining you for the bigger things ahead. These moments are where you're being molded into someone who can carry the responsibility of your calling. Without this process, you would not be ready for what's coming. God doesn't just want you to dream big. He wants you to be prepared to live out those dreams with the resilience and wisdom required to succeed. Look at the great leaders throughout history. Every one of them faced isolation and hardship before they stepped into their calling. Think about David. Before he became the king of Israel, he spent years in the fields alone, tending sheep with no one to rely on but God. It was there that God shaped his heart, taught him how to fight, and built his strength to face the giant Goliath. Look at Joseph. He had a dream of greatness, but before he could step into his destiny, he was betrayed, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and even wrongfully imprisoned. Yet, every challenge he faced was preparing him for the role he would later assume as the second in command in Egypt. If Joseph had never faced hardship, if he hadn't been through those painful moments of isolation, he would never have been positioned for the greatness that God had in store for him. Now, let's talk about how God uses isolation to build your character. When life is easy, when things are going according to plan, it's hard to grow. But in those moments of struggle, pain, and frustration, your true character is revealed. It's in those moments when you feel like giving up, when everything seems like it's falling apart, that your strength, resilience, and character are built. God knows that you cannot grow into the person you need to be for your calling without going through these experiences. He will not let you remain weak. He will not let you stay stuck in comfort. Comfort doesn't build character. Adversity does. When you're alone, when everything around you seems to be falling apart, that's when God is doing His deepest work in you. Look at some of the greatest figures in history. None of them became great by avoiding hardship. They became great by persevering through it. Think about Jesus. Before He stepped into His full power and purpose, He spent 40 days in the wilderness, fasting and facing intense isolation. It was there that He was tested, and it was there that He emerged stronger, ready to fulfill His mission. When God isolates you, He's not punishing you. He's preparing you for something bigger. And this process, though painful, is necessary. It's in isolation that you learn discipline. It's in isolation that you learn patience. It's in isolation that you learn to trust. The kind of faith that doesn't need proof, the kind of faith that remains strong even when things don't go your way. Because when it's time for you to step into your purpose, you won't have time to prepare. You have to be ready. So embrace this season, embrace the struggle. Because when God isolates the chosen, He is forging them into something unstoppable. Now let's dive into the next reason why God isolates you: to teach you dependence on Him. There comes a point when God will remove everything from your life, your comfort, your connections, your resources, until there's only Him left. This isn't to punish you. This isn't about seeing you suffer. It's because He wants you to learn one of the most important lessons of all: true dependence on Him. As long as you have backup plans, as long as you can rely on people, as long as you have things to fall back on, your faith will never be fully tested. But when those options are taken away, when the people you thought you could count on disappear, when the doors you thought were open stay shut, that's when your faith is tested. That's when you discover what your faith is really made of. Faith isn't about trusting God when everything makes sense. Faith is about trusting Him when nothing makes sense. Think about Abraham. God told him to leave everything he knew, the comfort of his home, the security of his family, and step into the unknown. He had no guarantee, no safety net, but he obeyed. And because of his obedience, he became the father of nations. Then there's Elijah. During a time of famine, God instructed him to go to a widow who had nothing but a small amount of flour and oil. Logic said it wasn't enough, but faith said that God was enough. And because Elijah trusted, the flour never ran out and the oil never ran dry. Look at Peter. In the middle of a storm, Jesus told him to step out of the boat and walk on water. It didn't make sense. Water can't hold weight. But Peter chose to depend on Jesus. And as long as his eyes were fixed on him, he walked on what should have drowned him. Now, let's talk about your own life. Maybe right now you're in a season where everything feels uncertain. Maybe everything you once relied on is gone, and you're questioning God, asking, why is this happening? But the real question is, what are you trying to teach me, God? Sometimes God has to take everything else away so that you can see that He was always enough. Money will run out. People will fail you. Plans will change. But God is the only constant. When He isolates you, He's not punishing you. He's teaching you to depend on Him in a way that you've never depended before. He's preparing you for a future where your faith will be tested, and you will have no choice but to rely on Him. And once you learn this lesson, once you truly understand that God is all you need, everything will change. You will realize that when everything else fails, He is enough. And that realization is what sets the stage for your next level of greatness. Finally, we come to the last reason God isolates the chosen, to position you for elevation. There are times when doors that once seemed wide open suddenly slam shut. People you thought would always be there start to disappear. And the path ahead of you, which once seemed clear, is now clouded with uncertainty. In these moments, it's easy to wonder if God has forgotten you, if He's abandoned you. But what's really happening is this: God is positioning you. You see, sometimes the only way to move forward is for God to make staying where you are impossible. He's closing the doors that need to be closed, and He's making room for something greater. What may seem like a rejection is actually a redirection, and what may feel like a setback is actually a setup. Think about Joseph again. He had a dream of greatness, but before he could step into that dream, he had to be positioned. He was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and wrongfully imprisoned. Yet, every one of those setbacks was actually preparing him for the palace. Every trial was positioning him for his destiny. What if Joseph had never been thrown into the pit? What if he had never been sold into slavery? What if he had never been wrongfully imprisoned? He would have never been positioned for the greatness that God had planned for him. Sometimes, God has to remove you from where you are to position you for where you're going. He's setting the stage for your elevation, and that process starts with isolation. God isolates the chosen not to punish them, but to prepare them for the elevation they are about to experience. The trials, the struggles, the isolation, they're all part of the process that positions you for the next level of your destiny. And when you look back, you'll see that everything He did, every door He closed, every relationship He removed, was all part of His plan to elevate you. Just like the individuals we've discussed, you too may find yourself in a season of transition, one where everything you once knew seems to be slipping away. You may feel like you're losing people, relationships that were once strong, and connections that once made you feel secure. But trust this: what feels like loss is, in fact, God positioning you. He is moving things around in your life in ways that you cannot yet see, ensuring that when the time comes, you are in the exact place where your purpose will unfold. During this season, it won't always be easy to understand the changes. In the midst of the storm, it won't feel like positioning. It will feel like pain, confusion, and loss. But I want you to hold on to this truth. God never isolates without purpose. Every disappointment, every delay, every moment of loneliness is not a punishment. It is a part of His divine plan to position you for what's ahead. He's shifting your life so that you are exactly where you need to be when the time comes for your purpose to be revealed. Let's consider the example of Moses. He was raised in Pharaoh's palace, surrounded by luxury and privilege. But before he could become the deliverer of Israel, he had to spend 40 years in the wilderness. Why? Because God needed to isolate him and prepare him. He had to strip away old ways of thinking, old comforts, and old mindsets. Only then was Moses ready to lead a nation. Look at David. He was anointed to be king. Yet before he could sit on the throne, he had to endure years of isolation. He fled from Saul, hid in caves, and felt forgotten. But those years were not wasted. God wasn't delaying David. He was developing him, shaping his heart and character to be the king Israel needed. You might find yourself in a similar situation right now, not fully understanding why things are shifting in your life. The pain, the confusion, the loneliness, it may feel overwhelming. But trust that God knows exactly what He's doing. He's positioning you for something greater. Stop trying to hold on to the things He's removing. Stop fighting to keep the people and situations that no longer serve you. God is preparing you for something beyond what you could imagine. This leads us to the next reason for isolation, to break you free from old limitations. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we face within ourselves. We are our own greatest obstacle, our fears, doubts, and the limitations we place on ourselves. When God calls you to something greater, He won't allow you to remain in a small mindset. Growth is painful. Breaking free from old mindsets and habits is uncomfortable. But God will not let you stay stuck. He will isolate you from everything that is holding you back. He will remove the environments, people, and patterns that keep you trapped in small thinking. Because as long as you are surrounded by the same voices, the same influences, and the same habits that have kept you in a box, you will never grow into the person He has called you to be. Think about the Israelites. They had been slaves in Egypt for 400 years. God had called them out of bondage, destined them for the promised land. But even after their physical freedom, they still carried the mindset of slaves. They doubted. They complained. They looked back. So what did God do? He isolated them in the wilderness, removing them from everything they knew so that He could break them free from the limitations of their past. Perhaps you're in your own wilderness right now. Maybe you've been praying for a new season, for breakthroughs, for new opportunities. But God knows that before you can step into something new, you have to let go of the old fears, old doubts, old insecurities, and old ways of thinking. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it feels like you're losing. But this isolation is your transformation. Think about Gideon. He didn't see himself as a leader, let alone a warrior. He was hiding, doubting, thinking small. But God had to isolate him from his old mindset before he could walk in his true calling. Or consider Peter. Before he became the rock of the early church, he had to go through moments of failure and isolation. He had to be stripped of his pride, fear, and doubt. Why? Because God was preparing him for something much greater. Now ask yourself, what old mindsets are holding you back? What fears are keeping you stuck? God is not isolating you to hurt you. He is isolating you to set you free. You cannot step into a new season with old thinking. You cannot carry small thinking into a big destiny. This season is about transformation, not destruction. When you let go of what God is trying to remove, you will emerge stronger. You will be bolder. You will be ready to step into the calling that God has prepared for you. The limitations that once held you back will no longer have a grip on you. Now let's look at the final reason why God isolates the chosen: to prepare you for the calling on your life. There is no calling without preparation. There is no destiny without discipline. No greatness without the process. God does not just send you into your purpose without first making sure you are strong enough to carry it. The weight of your calling is heavy, and if you aren't prepared, it will crush you. God isolates you to strengthen you, to equip you, to prepare you. Look at Moses. Before he led millions of Israelites out of Egypt, he spent 40 years in the wilderness. God needed to prepare him, to refine his character, to develop his leadership skills. Moses wasn't ready when he was first anointed. He had to go through a process of preparation. Think about David. He was anointed king, but he didn't just step into the palace immediately. He went back to the fields. He faced battles, betrayals, moments of isolation. But each step of that process was preparing him for the throne. God wasn't delaying David. He was developing him. And think about Jesus. He is the Son of God, destined to save the world. But before he could fulfill his purpose, he spent 40 days in the wilderness. He fasted. He faced temptation. He was isolated. Why? Because he had to be prepared. His mission was too great to step into without the necessary preparation. Now look at yourself. You feel the call. You know there's something greater inside of you. You know you were made for more. But right now, you may feel like nothing is happening. Doors are closed. People are walking away. But do not mistake this season for wasted time. God is not delaying you. He is preparing you. He is refining your character. He is teaching you discipline and deepening your faith. He is removing everything in your life that would sabotage your future. So, if you're feeling hidden, if you're feeling unseen, if you're wondering why things are taking so long, trust the process. God isolates the chosen to prepare them for greatness. When the time comes for you to step into your purpose, you won't just be called, you will be ready. So if you find yourself in a season of isolation, understand this: you are not abandoned. You are being prepared. And when you step into your calling, you will realize that everything you went through was worth it. If you feel like you're walking through this alone, keep watching, because the next chapter of your story is being written. Stay strong, stay faithful, and remember, God does not isolate without purpose. He's positioning you for something greater.